What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another Pound for Pound ATL. If you hadn't had a chance to go look at the video that Toby did regarding the D-line, I highly suggest you do that. That was a well-done video talking about the relentless nature of the D-line leader, Grady Jarrett, and how it could potentially affect the rest of the D-line. And that really got me thinking about a video that I had did last year about this time, talking about the 4-2-5 defense. Now, that defense is something that we should see going forward again this year with Dean Pease under the helm. And I actually think that it's going to be a better defense than what we had last year for a lot of different reasons. This is kind of also going to be starting off the camp battle series. And what I want to talk about is the D-line and how I think it's going to shape up. Last year, you were relying on guys such as John Kaminsky and Stephen Means to give you meaningful stats, along with Dante Fowler and Tyler Davidson and Mike Pennell. Now, Pennell, he did pretty good for us, but a lot of those other guys obviously didn't live up to what they were hoping for, which is the reason why they weren't brought back. Now, we have a lot of intriguing names in this going into camp that are going to be fighting for potential spots. And that really got me to thinking about how this defensive line is going to fare out. First thing, let's just go ahead and jump on into it, okay? This is what I see as the starting 4-2-5 defense. Now, we're going to go from right to left, starting on the defensive line. Now, he's in practice, and I'm going to show you some clips here, or not clips, but some still images here in a minute. In practice down at the Benz, Lorenzo Carter lined up at the right edge when I saw him out there. So I have Lorenzo Carter listed at the right defensive end position or edge position. Now we're going to get into what those techs are here in a minute, but that's lining up as a 5 tech. Okay. Now next to him in the 3 tech position is Grady Jarrett, which Grady is going to be moved all over the place, and we'll get into that a little bit here in a minute. But for purposes of what we got going on here, I think Grady Jarrett is going to be obviously your starter. Dean Pease says he sees him as Jarrell Casey, a guy who is on the field all downs, doesn't come off the field, so he's going to be moved around a lot. Now, the biggest acquisition, in my opinion, is the one that we made over this past week, was the signing of Eddie Goldman. Now, he gives you a true nose tackle. Now, I know we got Anthony Rush, and I think Anthony Rush is going to play heavily in this rotation, but I think Eddie Goldman gives you a true upgrade over Mike Pennell last year. Gives you a strong run stuffing 1 tech, 0 tech. Can also play 3 tech. He can move up and down. He gives you a good bit more pass rush as well. So that's a signing that I think ends up having a lot more value than some people might necessarily realize right at the moment. And then your other 5 tech, I think, coming out of camp is going to be Arnold Ebiketie. Now, I know that the staff really likes Ogundeji, but I think Ogundeji is going to be a rotational guy, or I'm going to show you a front here in a minute that they rolled out at practice, and I think Ogundeji is going to be more of your run stuffing 5 tech. So depending on the teams we face, if they're a heavy run team, you might see more Ogundeji than you see Ebiketie. But I think on your passing downs, what you're looking at here is going to be a common for what we got here. So backing up off the defensive line, you got Rashawn Evans and Michael Walker manning the middle of the field or linebacker spots, with Jalen Hawkins, Richie Grant in your safety spots. I think Richie Grant is going to be more of the deep safety, more of range, but I also think that the safeties are interchangeable, so don't really get too caught up there. The money roll or money backer is Isaiah Oliver, and I'm going to show you probably what his role is going to be quite a bit in one of these clips. That's in this particular still, it's Mike Ford playing that rover money role. But if Isaiah Oliver shows that he's healthy, he's going to be that guy. Then obviously your cornerbacks are Casey Hilbert and A.J. Terrell. I would reference you back to the zone video I did a couple weeks ago. See if you want to get more information on the type of coverages I think that we're going to be running a lot more of. So, anyway, now that's one variation. I think that's the main pass rushing variation. Now here is what I'm going to call the run stuffing or the 4-2-5 heavy. Everything's pretty much the same, except you have, instead of two edges, you have Taquan Graham coming in to play either one of the 5 techniques, or I'm going to say that he'll play a 3 technique next to Eddie Goldman or Anthony Rush, and then you would probably kick Grady Jarrett out to more of a 4-eye. I don't have him positioned right for a 4-eye, but that's more of what I'm talking about. Now, when we talk about, you hear people say 3-eye, 2-eye, techs and all this other stuff. This is what we're talking about here. All right. It's all in where they line up. If you hear somebody say eye, that's an inside shade. The inside shade just means they're lining up on the inside shoulder of the offensive lineman. Okay. You can see the numbers, how they're broke out there. A 4-eye is more on the inside of the tackle, where a 5 tech is on the outside of the tackle, right? So you can see how the numbers correspond. So if you hear somebody that we is in a good battle, especially we consider the fact that we signed Eddie Goldman, is Vincent Taylor. Now Vincent Taylor plays what you see there is what they call the 2-eye. The 2-eye is set up on the inside of the guard and the center. That's a position that he plays, quite a bit. So, but he can play head up on the center as well, which is what we call a 1 technique or a 0. 0 is head up. 1 is kind of shading one way or the other. But he can play that 2-eye penetrating. So there's going to be a real battle that takes place between all these D linemen outside of, I'd say, Grady Jarrett, Taquan Graham. I feel like those guys are locks, and Lorenzo Carter. Go ahead and just, if it's a draft pick, I'd say they're a lock too. Taquan Graham is, more or less a lock to make the roster. I think the battle comes down to Marlon Davidson. I think the battle comes down to Eddie Goldman. I think the battle comes down to Vincent Taylor and Anthony Rush. So that's the inside shades. I'll show you the other ones as well, just so you know. If you hear somebody saying a 2, a 4, those are head up, meaning they're lined up head to head with their respective guard, tackle, or tight end. So that's what those techs are. I know sometimes we can, we throw those terms around a lot, and people may not necessarily know what those terms mean. So I always like to try to give refreshers, so to speak. Now, let's get into some of the things that I saw, right? Check this out. This is that first alignment that I showed you. Now, I know this is off my phone, so it's not the clearest of pictures, but the guy in red, that's Lorenzo Carter. Next to him is Taquan Graham and Grady Jarrett with their hands in the dirt. And then on the other end of them is Arnold Ebiketie. And so what you're seeing there is your no. Okay, I'm wrong. The guy on the other end with the white sleeves is not Ebiketie. That's Ogundeji. My apologies. But you have Mike Ford in the position that if Isaiah Oliver is healthy, he will be playing. And I'm going to show you another picture right there. You can see him. What Ford's doing there is rushing the quarterback. He's coming on that blitz, which is something that they had Oliver doing, a good bit last year. And given if he's healthy, I think you're going to see that a lot more of. They did make a concerted effort to go out and get more guys who could do that role better. So you weren't necessarily relying on Darren Hall or the now converted running back Avery Williams. They brought in a lot of like slot corner guys because they didn't want to find themselves in that position again. Now, that's not guaranteeing that Isaiah Oliver is going to just come in and take that role over again. But given what Dean Pease says last year, or that at the end of the year, early part of this offseason, if Isaiah Oliver was there, it was his position. So we're going to see how he recovers as camp goes on. But that's another battle to watch there is, does Isaiah Oliver reclaim his spot? But yeah, that's a full-on look. And you have, there right behind the defensive line, you got Rashawn Evans and Michael Walker manning that the linebacker spots. So that right there shows you that last year's use of the 4-2-5, like that's what Pease wants to do. That's the type of fronts that he wants to run. He wants to run that under front. And if you hear somebody talking about an under front, that just means that the one tech or the zero tech, mainly the one tech, is shifted more towards the strong side of the formation. What's the strong side of the formation? Generally speaking, that's where there's more receiving threats, or generally that means that's where the tight end is. A lot of times they run to the strong side of the formations. So you're already giving your defense a chance by having one of your defensive linemen shaded that way. Now, this right here is, I think this, is that what I wanted to show y'all? Yeah, we'll say that it is. Okay. We'll just go with that. Y'all get a chance to see me like do this stuff in real time, so to speak. All right. So this right here is a 5-man front. Now, what you're seeing here is Lorenzo Carter, Anthony Rush. In this particular formation, it was Marlon Davidson, Grady Jarrett, and Ogundeji. Now, you could take out Marlon Davidson if he doesn't end up making the squad, and that could be Taquan Graham, Eddie Goldman, Grady Jarrett, Audie Ogundeji, and Lorenzo Carter. And that could easily be what that line is. Now, that's a strong, run stuffing line, which is kind of funny because in this actual clip, Quadre Olison does end up getting a good hole and going for a decent amount of yards. So pads, not really hitting nobody. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. But what I'm saying is you're starting to see what I consider to be some flexibility, because in this particular formation, Lorenzo Carter's got enough athleticism that he can drop into coverage. That's something that he did at the University of Georgia. So it's something that I know that he can do. You don't want him doing it all the time, but with how Dean Pease likes to use, simulated pressures and creepers, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if you do see Lorenzo Carter, who is a good athlete, dropping into coverage. Not more often than not, but especially if you see a heavy defensive lineman. Now, what you don't get to see here is right before this ball is snapped, Mike Ford, I believe it's Mike Ford, it's either him or another defensive back, comes walking down onto the line. So that gives you 6 guys on the line. Now, he ends up dropping out, but it's all in trying to confuse the quarterback, trying to give them something different to look at. But as I said, we're sitting here talking about like potential camp battles going in, and what are some of the ones that I'm interested in seeing, and curtailing off of Toby's video the other day, the defensive line has me intrigued because I feel like it's a far better upgrade than what we had last year, and that's going to present a lot more competition and a lot better competition than we had last year, and it's something that I'm super excited and super pumped about to see this 4-2-5 defense really morph into what Dean Pease sees and what he wants it to be, being able to use those simulated pressures because you have a versatile guy like Isaiah Oliver in that money role, or because you have a guy like Lorenzo Carter who can drop into coverage, or the fact that you have Eddie Goldman who can line up all down the line. The same with Grady Jarrett. You can really start having some fun mixing and matching where you have these guys lining up so that these offenses can't key in on. I think that was the main problem that happened last year, is that you had guys who could do one thing decent, so when you saw them out on the field, you knew what was coming because that was the one thing that they could do. Now you have guys who can play at the different positions, at the different techniques there that make it an interesting, concept. Like, you got Lorenzo Carter who can play a 5, but who can also play a 9, right? Same thing with Ebiketie. Ebiketie can play a 9 as well. So that is something to keep in mind as we move towards going to camp. Well, that's all I got for you today. As always, y'all can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128. That's GRIMM1128. And all links for merch and Patreon and that kind of stuff is down below. As always, Falcons fans, rise up.